I've had people stand in this pulpit who are prophets and prophetesses and prophesy over the last several years that they saw a great revival coming up Interstate 35 from Laredo all the way up to where it ends and terminates in Duluth, Minnesota. All the way across the midsection of America, a great revival. And they have tied it into Isaiah 35, that there are similarities there. And I shared this just briefly in the introduction last week over at Good News International Fellowship in Arlington, how that in Isaiah 35 there is a proclamation of the moving of God, and when the Lord begins to move, the parched ground will become springs of living water, become pools filled with refreshing water. And I believe God wants this place to become a pool of refreshing, living waters. The fact is, though, that it starts with the parched ground. And every one of you probably has an area of your life you've prayed and you've dreamed of having a greater breakthrough in that area and a real victory in that area, and yet you have somewhat been limited. If you remember the beautiful teaching that Gerald Patterson gave just 2 or 3 weeks ago in one of our homecoming services about Leah, she was not pretty. Her eyes didn't sparkle, and yet God used her in magnificent ways. Without Leah, there wouldn't have been a tribe of Judah, so we have no Jews. Well, how are we going to have a Boaz? How are we going to have a David, King David, without having Judah? How are we going to have Solomon? How are we going to have the Psalms without Judah? How are we going to have Proverbs? How are we going to have Moses without Levi? How are we going to have the early books of the Bible, the Torah, the Pentateuch? How are we going to have all of this that we are so blessed with if we don't have little plain Leah, who always kind of feels left out and circumvented? And it was a beautiful message. If you didn't get it, order it back there. But God has a use for everyone. Don't ever think that you are so out of the way, or you're too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny. You don't have a face for TV. You've got a face made more for radio than TV. We all have these certain limitations, and we all dream, I just wish we were better in that area. But for this congregation, I believe the Lord wants it to become, and let's begin to believe for it, that it will become pools of living waters. I believe we are named Mountain Creek very aptly, and we need to hang on to that. We're not a little muddy pond that's a mix of many different waterways, but this is a refreshing spring up here. So let's be that. Let's pray for that. Let's contend for that. And I want to just tell you briefly, we are in the time of the end of the end of the end, the time of the return of Christ. I worry as I see what is happening in our government. I fret over it, and at the same time, the Lord by the Spirit tells me not to worry. I think we need to be involved as civic people as much as we can, and our citizenship duties we need to carry out. But if you're hoping for something to take away all the tares that have been sown into the field of the Lord here in America, it probably is not going to happen, because the wheat and the tares are going to grow up side by side. Now, you know what I'm talking about with tares? We don't have growing in our wheat fields what we would call tares. We would say weeds, but what we have in Texas is a cousin to the Middle Eastern tare, and that's Johnson grass. Somebody has said that's the state flower of Texas. No, it's not. It's the bluebonnet is. But Johnson grass grows where nothing else can grow. You try to grow a yard, and Johnson grass will grow in it. I mean, you baby the carpet grass, or you baby the Bermuda, and somehow it struggles. But Johnson grass doesn't, and it grows up tall, straight up tall, and it's full of seed, and it spreads quickly. And the thing about a tare, the difference between wheat and tare, is that if you walk out in the field, you will see as wheat comes to maturity, it bows, it bends over. A tare doesn't. it sticks straight up. That's an element that you can liken unto an analogy of pride. And so the pride that's out there, the sin that is out there, the evil that is out there, it will continue to grow. Things will get darker, but the harvest is maturing and coming into fruition, and it's a time for worldwide harvest, and we have evidence of it right here. We've got men of God from around different nations and different continents, and this ministry here is involved in different continents and different nations and different ethnos, different people. We should be. My home church, I grew up in Houston. I thought it was as good as any home church. It was a beautiful church. It was very much involved in the charismatic renewal. And yet our missions program consisted basically of Guatemala and one little nation, Ghana, over in West Africa. That was basically it. And we had generous people. We had good people. But there was no way to really interact with the other nations. That's not true anymore. And we are at a place of worldwide harvest, and you need to be praying for the work in Zagreb, Croatia. You need to be praying for the work in Kenya, and the work in Burundi, Rwanda. There's one other nation. Zimbabwe, yes. Be praying for that. Are you in Harare? Yes. We know Brother Asa Gorapita. Brother Asa Gorapita. You know Brother Asa. Has a great work right downtown. And we are involved. And my friends are in and out all the time, going into places where they are instructing and assisting. This is a sign of the end time. For Jesus said, this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all nations for a sign, and then shall the end come. I want to go back to this little thought that we read earlier. In my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go away, I will come back. I will come back. I will come again to receive you for myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Those words always remind me of General MacArthur's famous speech. When Pearl Harbor was bombed at the start of World War II, we lost much of our firepower over in the Pacific, and so it left the places that we had been guarding, like the Philippines, vulnerable. And our enemies came and took over the Philippines. And General MacArthur, who had been a coordinator in the South Pacific at that time, he had to flee with his office. But he said, I will return. 2 years later, it took him 2 years and many battles from island to island, but MacArthur came back. And I went to school with a whole lot of guys named after him. That was a popular name, and the war babies that were born were named. But Jesus said, I will come back. And we have his word, we have his promise. I will come back. Let me just read one other scripture, and then I want to wrap up some of the things I've wanted to say, because I want to hear. In Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, this is a message that we often hear. In fact, Paul, in the first, let's start at 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians, they were so taken by Paul's letter that they were ready for Jesus to come right then and there. In 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 13, I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep, lest you sorrow as others who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words. Now these words need to be comforting to each other. But now they got all excited and thought, well, the Lord's going to come anytime. Maybe we need to go out on a hillside somewhere and kind of keep our eyes on the eastern sky and be ready to go. And we've had a lot of little books written that the Lord is going to come at a certain date. He's going to come imminently. But it's like the pieces of a puzzle. You ever put together a big puzzle that's got 500 pieces, and you've got this piece, you know it's crucial, but it won't fit anywhere until other pieces get fit in. And the coming of the Lord is very much like that. Every generation has had the blessed hope. Every generation has looked for the Lord to come. But now we finally have all the pieces of the puzzle out there, and they're being fit together. And that little piece that you often wondered, well, boy, that doesn't fit. Well, it does fit today. I've often wondered about Revelation 16, about the saints who were beheaded, and their souls were under the altar. I thought, maybe that's not a last day prophecy, because we got a lot better ways of killing people today. We can bomb them, we can grenade them, we can gas them, we can blow them up, we can drop bombs out of a plane, we can shoot missiles, and it's talking about souls beheaded. Well, we're right back to that cruel, hideous way of killing people is the way that ISIS is killing the Christians right now today. These are signs of the time, and violence is covering the earth. But you know what? The light of God shines in his church brightly. But one thing I want to warn you about, in 2 Thessalonians, Paul said, that day will not come until there's first a falling away, a great falling away, he called it. And I'm just amazed today. I am disturbed today at how many people have just fallen away. I'm not talking about disgruntled people who didn't get their way. We put the water fountain in the wrong place. They wanted it at the end of the hall, and we put it at the beginning of the hall, and they got upset and said, well, bless God, I'm leaving. And we've always had a few immature people like that in the Church of Jesus Christ. If you don't think so, you could meet with some of the pastors I meet with in Duncanville. But there's a falling away of people who are just done. That's the new word. They're done with church. That's why Hebrews says, so much more as you see that day approaching, be involved. Be involved. Be a part of that. Be intent. Those that hold out true to the end, they're going to be the ones that are going to be saved in all of this. But listen, let me tell you what, I am full of hope. I'm full of hope because this gospel of the kingdom is being preached in all nations. And it's a witness. About 20 years ago, I was in a prayer group with other pastors. We were meeting over at Trinity Church in Cedar Hill. And one of the guys started talking about, tsunamis are coming. Well, I grew up on the Gulf Coast. I grew up where hurricanes are and tidal waves and such as that. I had never heard the word tsunami that I could remember. I had to go look that up. We didn't have Google back then, so I had to use a big, thick dictionary. What is a tsunami? And this brother that said tsunamis are coming. And we've had, probably in the last 20 years since then, we've had major tsunamis, big giant tidal waves. I had bought a little Toyota that had one of those hybrid engines in it and electric motors in it. And after that tidal wave hit Japan, it had destroyed the company that was making those little connections with the motor to the engine. and the batteries and all that. And my car became worth a whole lot more than what I'd paid for it. And so I let a dealer buy my car back. And I took my money and pocketed it and went out and got something else. A tsunami did that. And I had never even heard the word tsunami up to 20 years. Even though I grew up on the Gulf Coast, we didn't have tsunamis. We had big tides, but we didn't have any big waves. But the sea and the waves are roaring. But be at peace. The Lord said, don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. Listen, this is going to be the finest hour of the church. And the Lord wants you to be in fellowship. He wants to cover you with peace. He wants you to grow in His likeness. He wants you to be a part of the harvest. He has a purpose for you that He has seen since the beginning of time, before the beginning of time. Paul said to the Ephesians that He will show off through the church the manifold wisdom of God. He will let it be known to principalities and powers and the heavenly places. It might be known by the church, the manifold wisdom of God. Church, this is our finest hour. Let us rise up and do the work of God. Let's go forward full of hope, full of excitement, knowing that God is with us. Who can be against us?